kuambia rais, tafadhali, kwa sababu hiyo initiative na imekuwa ni maombi ya watu wengi, saidia huyu mzee Raila baba apate kazi ya AU.
Na kwa sababu yeye ametuletea mambo mingi, hata katiba alichangia, mambo mingi amechangia. Mimi naomba Wakenya wote tukue wangwana, tuunge mkono Raila Amolo Odinga awe chairman wetu wa kule, ndio pia dunia mzima ijue Wakenya ni watu wangwana.
Ile rasilimali sasa iko Afrika. Tunaelekea kiwango ambaye tutaanza kubadilisha raw materials into finished products.
Mandaka anaomba, lakini watu yake akina Mbati wanapinga, hataki mzee aende EU.
Wabunge wa ODM wameanza kuleta shida kwa sababu Raila alikuwa anafanya akuwe tu kwa debe wanachaguliwa. Hawakuwa wanafanya kazi kubwa.
Ngangana amesimama zaidi ya mara 5. Anafika kwa mlango mambo inaharibika.
Utamu ya election ni kushinda Raila. Sasa hii utamu ya kura itakuwa ni nini? Utamu ya election ni Raila aseme kimeibiwa.
Na sisi hatutaki hasara ya kila siku ashindwe na kusema ameibiwa. Sijui mwizi anakuanga wapi katikati ya hii kura.
Lakini Raila pia ni mtoto ya mtu, tukubaliane hiyo AU.
Tuaje fitina. Huyu baba anatosha kuleta reform.
Lakini juu unajua akienda AU atasema ameibiwa kura. Mimi bwana mkarabati naomba nikuwe agent yake kwa hiyo kura, kama kuna mahali ndio nimchungia asibiwe tena.
Sisi tupeane kwa usalama. Wale jamii yake wakipinga, sisi tuko tayari kunyorosha.
Ili tupate amani kwa hii nchi, tupunguze maandamano, tupunguze kelele, ili tupate nafasi ya kufanya kazi.
Kenya, we produce the most experienced leaders. Na kwa Raila, sasa yeye tunasema ametosha.
Kuna mtu inagani, mnashindana na mtu akianguka unamtafutia kazi. Tutumatie makofi president wetu. Ama namna gani?
Ile kiti ya African Union haiombe kama kiti ya mzee ametaa. Inaombwa na serikali ya William Samoei Kipchirchir Arap Ruto. Haitaombwa na ODM. So apige magoti mbele, aseme naunga mkono rais, alafu tunaenda mbele. Sina namna hiyo.
Rais akisema kuna kazi ya nasi Saudi Arabia, kama hiyo imekuwa 2000 jobs. Sio ya huyo mtu mwingine, ni ya wewe unasikiza. I implore upon all the young people of Kenya, let us take advantage of the many jobs that the president is going out of his way ya kutafutia sisi kama vijana.
Why are leaders in Coast quiet? Are they scared of the drug barons? These are elected leaders. Mbona wanaogopa kuongea? Or could it be some of these drug barons waliwasaidia wakitafuta viti? This is a question we are asking, because why are people quiet? Why are some not here? This is a very important conference.
We cannot allow a murderer to continue murdering Kenyans because they are licensed.
And the chiefs know who is selling these drugs. Wanajua.
Every inch of our territory requires efficient services and the protection of its national security organs.
Drug peddlers and barons belong to jail. State officers abetting this illegal trade have no room under this administration.
Tumesema hatutaweza na haitawezekana tena. Wale ambao walikuwa ni cartels katika music industry, hivi sasa siku zao zimeisha. Itakuwa ni pesa kwa mwanamuziki kwanza.
Right, that is the soapbox, just giving you the feel, the political feel and flavor of the week that has been. And of course also the trajectory of the week that we are in, what will be happening. Today is a big day also in the Senate. They shall be pushing this particular, as you can see it from the editorial cartoon there, where the MPs, as is being put by the stano there, are pushing the pill or cramming it down the throat of Kenyans, the affordable housing pill. As you see it, who is behind all that energy? They're asking. As you can see, we have some hands which are proffered there. Is a yellow and yellow shirt and a green suit as it is. So let's just begin first of all where it began last week in the National Assembly. And I want just to begin with you, Dr. Ochena Molo, just to tell us, just highlighting how last week was, because you're not given ample opportunity as opposition to debate robustly some of very salient issues that you and other legislators were picking out from this particular bill, and that was not given maybe the ample time that it should have been given for you to debate robustly. But you can tell us the nature of the debate that was on the floor of the House, and what do we expect from the Senate?
Thank you, Dubal. Last week we were here with you, Honorable Mungatana, Honorable Yusuf, and my brother, Senator
Okongo
Mogeni.
Yes.
And I told my two brothers boldly that we will not get the opportunity for proper debate in the House. And that in 2 or 3 days they are likely to have passed it. I actually went ahead of myself because I didn't know they had planned a far more drastic move. On that very day, it was decided that, just as I said, we went to Bunge. I was the first in Bunge, prepared to continue with the second reading, which is to continue the debate that had only gone on for 1 day the previous week, on Thursday, which was the same day it was introduced. I was very surprised that even before we could start, my friend, Honorable Chepkonga, stood on Standing Order 95, which I had mentioned here that very morning, and said that, he was inviting the Speaker to find that the debate had been exhausted, and that therefore the mover should be called upon to respond. I had to myself stand on a standing order to draw the Speaker's attention that on the only 1 day of debate, I had been doing another case, pro bono actually, that involved all members, and that the people of Rarieda had not had a say. So I'm the only one the Speaker allowed to speak on that matter for that reason. And there were many others who wanted to speak. So you can imagine the debate on such an important matter was essentially closed in 1.5 days, barely 1 day actually, because it was only on Thursday last week, the previous week. And just like that, that debate was closed. What then happened is we raised some other complaints, and one of those complaints that was raised, we had discussed with my Honorable Dr. Nyikal, is that we were coming at a stage where even for the second reading, the report did not contain the amendments that were proposed by, the committee. So that even what people were debating, you were essentially debating what you don't know. Because the report itself was about 192 pages, but then they had just indicated that there were many recommendations for amendment. They were not there. The report itself also that was availed did not capture the committee recommendation, leave alone the draft amendment and the summary of the views received. So they ended up presenting a report which is essentially indicating who came, so it was threadbare. Now, by the very next day, we were now on the committee of the whole House, you can imagine, and the Speaker allowed amendments to be put up to, I think, midday. So some of us who now were able to see the amendments that were proposed, and even in the original report, even though we had lost the original vote, and we knew we would lose it, okay? And our complaint was that we did not get our say. But we thought there were some parts of the bill that were so gross that even though the whole bill was a bad idea, we could salvage a few parts. And so a few of us, we agreed to put some amendments, on Monikal, Antonio Luoch, on Emilio Diambo, and like that. But by the time we came to the committee of the whole House, it was obvious that instructions had been given not to amend anything, to reject everything that comes from the minority side, and to adopt everything that comes from the committee, okay, the two joint committees. So right from the word go, when I tried to move the very first amendment to the very first provision of Section 2, it was overwhelmingly shot down within seconds. And it became obvious that there's no other amendment that was going to sail through anyway. So we quickly consulted and decided, is it worth sitting there, trying to speak, and then no one will listen, and everything you say will just be rejected. So we decided that there was no point, because it was obvious, we were outnumbered, we were outgunned, instructions had come, so reason could not prevail, and that's when we walked out. I can tell you, Dibal, that last week when we were here, we pointed out a number of provisions that were dangerous which were in the bill. But the amendments that were now introduced have made the document much worse, much worse than it originally was. And at an appropriate time, we'll be able to point that out. I am sure some of like Senator Mugen and the others who are yet to be debated have now seen those provisions. They have moved even what was originally a housing bill to something that is not a housing bill. It is now referring, that is addressing housing, social, and other, physical infrastructure, whatever that means. That means we are no longer talking about the housing bill. But I would point out to you, which if we had debate, we'd have been able to point out, that if the document in its original form was unconstitutional, was dangerous, was unreasonable, now it is 10 times more on each of those elements.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right, let me just cross over to Honorable Farah. First of all, to just talk on the nature of looking at the standing orders, Article 95, you're the member of a speaker's panel. Yeah. And I presume also that particular day, material day, you were in the House to, of course, you were not there. But there have been questions which were actually raised regarding just the nature of debate in the House, and where we have members of opposition or the minority are not given ample opportunity, and invoking Article 95 most times to curtail debates, especially on a crucial bill like a housing levy. That we've seen it, from the courts. There has been a committee that has been going about the country, I think, to 19 counties, and yet what Honorable Otende is telling us, that all those public participation opinions that were put forward, none of them came to bear, and it seems what we had before and now is diametrically different, even worse from the original bill that was there. First of all, just from that particular beginning, because this is not the first time that we've had legislators complaining on how they're not given opportunity to debate or the floor of the House, and how also bills are rushed, they're introduced late, they cannot even get any affordable time to, tease out some of the issues that are there, given the bulk maybe of a document and the days that are given. They're really pinched for time. Good morning.
Good morning to you. The House is a debating house. And it doesn't matter how minute or how small a section of the House is. It is upon the chair, and I have enforced this myself always, to allow the maximum leeway for everybody, or as many as possible people who are interested in debating that, to have an opportunity. You can say, the debate has been exhausted, and now we invoke standing order number 95. And the mover be called upon to reply. But the Speaker, when he sees the mood of the House, that there are people who want to contribute, you overrule that. There's another standing order, I don't know if it's standing order number 35. What was it? Standing order number 35? Or I can't remember which one it was. Give me the standing order, yes. Which essentially tells you that you should not allow that. Because you are limiting the rights of members of the Parliament, however small and however much of a minority they are, for them also to contribute on that and to give their position. The House is a debating house. You can actually, I came into that house when we had a filibustering, which means you could stand there for days on end and nobody's going to stop you, as long as you had the energy yourself. So bringing these things, this debate to a closure is a mistake. I have never allowed that. Didn't watch that. I was not around that time. I don't know who was on the chair, but I think ordinarily you should allow as many members of Parliament who want to contribute on this matter as possible. And when I say as possible, is that you protect the rights of the minority there. It's the rights of the majority to have their way, and the rights of the minority basically to have their say. At the end of the day, numbers count, and numbers are going to be there, but allow the other side to literally vent out on these things, ventilate, and bring in as much material as possible on the floor of the House. Even if they are irrelevant. You are allowed to maintain that irrelevance and keep on talking there. But so basically, I think that was supposed to be cured with this constitution. You remember the previous days, we changed our whole constitution and made this thing a de jure one-party country in 1 hour. You know that. And under this constitution, this new dispensation, all the efforts we made for change in this country and the reforms we fought for, among other things, very fundamental was to allow people to have a difference in the way we ran business in the legislative bodies in the past. So allow as many people, and it's a pity when I hear, if I was on the chair myself, I would have allowed it to the end. And if I'm on the chair the following day, or even the following day, the third day, I'll continue allowing that.
But it seems this is becoming the norm, that when you have very crucial debates, I remember also the deputy governor of the central bank, when her issue was brought on the table, there was not even any opportunity to try and vet that particular deputy governor. That particular 95, the standing order does 95 also was invoked. So it seems
it's an abuse. Let me be honest with you. It's an abuse of a provision in the standing orders. Ordinarily, the idea is that if everything is exhausted and the House is not contributing anymore, then you can allow and say, okay, fine, find out. But you don't put the question and say, as many of that opinion that the question should be put. Say, I know. You, as a chair, would overrule that and allow the voices, however minute those voices are, to contribute until you are convinced that this thing has had sufficient ventilation from both sides, mainly the opposition, by the way. Because you see, it's the right, the government side, the numbers will always protect themselves through those numbers. But then the small numbers, the minorities, you don't use what you call what was that thing called, of the majority, the
tyranny.
The tyranny of the majority. You don't use that in the House, and the Speaker or whoever is on the chair is must protect that minority to keep talking until you see that nobody is really interested in contributing on this. If I was on the chair myself, I don't want to have impute anything on anybody who was there, but by tradition, I don't even know who was there on the chair that time because I was out of the country. You allow that. The abuse of that, invoking of section, what do you call Article 95 of the standing orders is a mistake, and in my opinion, that the chair should always protect the minority side to ventilate whatever issue that's on the floor of the House.
All right, so if there are queries which are being raised and if there are frustrations which are being raised by the minority and you have the legislation which has passed right now, have we passed that particular junction? There's no leeway for you to try and sort of rebut that particular legislation that has been assented to, or that is a law. It is passed, it is passed.
Once it's passed, it's passed.
Once it's passed, it's passed.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just wait for the Senate maybe to try and rectify it if there are any anomalies. Aidan.
The Parliament, first of all, is a deliberative house, and it's governed by traditions, rules that are consistent with all the traditions actually of democratically elected parliaments. This issue of housing levy or housing bill has been on the agenda for quite some time, since the election. You ask yourself 3 questions. How many members from those who are complaining were there, first of all? What is their number? How many were there? Was the parliamentary debate preceded by a PG as the tradition has been? And why was there a change this particular time? And what was the feeling among... I like Otieno Omolo. He's normally extremely honest and I have a lot of faith in him. So by now he must have realized that particular day he was alone. Even on the question of whether they will walk out or not, there was a division among the leadership. On the question of whether they will whether they were to issue a press conference after that walkout, there was division. We have been around. We understand this. So I can tell you what happened. What is their numbers? They have over 100-something members of parliament. How many were around that particular day? Less than 50. If really they wanted to demonstrate their numbers.
Inside the House?
Inside the House.
149 outside the House.
No, don't combine. That's the combined numbers. Yeah. How many out of the group? Forget about those who have absented themselves because of different reasons. And you know, I like what Farah has said. These houses, or I call it parliament, in particular the two coalitions, and allied groups have leaders. The KK group and allied groups were whipped. There was a PG that preceded the opening of Parliament. And people discussed, debated, agreed on the national agenda, what to do. There was no coercion. Why did the Azimio miss? Why didn't Azimio not do the same this particular time? Was there whipping? No. How many were around? The number is what you have had. Have attempts been made actually to even introduce, as they normally do, amendments? The answer is no. And the standing orders allow when there's repetition on the same. You can invoke standing order 95 and say now, maybe what is being discussed is a lot of repetition. There's need to call the mover to reply. But that being the case, Parliament is a house of numbers. The majority must always have
its way.
Their way. The minority must always have their say. But what that is also governed by rules. I have had the privilege, and this report, as much as my friend is putting a lot of, casting a lot of aspersion on the report has the public view, the observations, and the recommendations. What is missing is maybe the kind of recommendation that I've been a member, and I'm a member of that particular committee. The kind of recommendations that he envisaged to be included. Maybe that is not what, and equally, even that committee has members from the other side. Where are their dissenting reports? Out of 15 members, close to 6 are from that side. Where are the dissenting reports? Why have they not filed? That will have demonstrated clear seriousness. I can tell you behind the scene, both groups agreed to support this bill. Don't listen to what is being said now to the TV, to the public. Both groups, and we have been around and we see the way people do. Even in the Senate, it will pass. I know few choruses like my friend Omugen and others will. And ultimately, all the issues that have been raised by the court have been addressed. We attempted. It may not be as, first of all, let's accept there is no bill. We are all human beings.
So where is the dissenting reporter expected to emanate?
Where are they?
Is it from the same committee?
They have every right. You see, the committee members, this is a joint report by the Housing and the Finance and Planning Committee. The membership is almost 8-1. 8-7, sorry. Every member of the opposition Azimio had the right to object to any particular clause, any particular observation or recommendation. Have you seen any dissenting report by the members of the Azimio from the two committees? The answer is no. Why have they not booked their numbers to come and demonstrate their seriousness in opposing the bill? It tells you also what was there. How comes more than 2/3 of their members were absent on that particular day? It also tells you something. How comes some of their key leaders were not part of the press conference that was casting aspersion on the decision of the then chair, the then speaker, who was there on the floor of the House? It also tells you something. So behind the scene, there's general consensus that this bill attempts to address every bit of what the court actually had said. It may not be perfect, and it will not be perfect because this is a man-made report.
It's unconstitutional.
I'm just saying, that is your view. Another lawyer will say it's constitutional. Me as a practitioner, I will also say it's constitutional. So that is the essence of our vibrant democracy. As it is, let's wait for the Senate to educate, to do what they think is best. It's a deliberative house. Whatever that comes out, we'll go to the president. He can decide to not to assent or assent. And ultimately, if a Kenyan has an issue with it, the court is still open. So nothing is lost.
All right.
The only thing that you will not agree is for few individuals to sit somewhere and attempts to force their ideas on everybody else and say, look, this is the way they think, we must also think the same. This is a democracy.
Thank you.
For me, you may not want that bill. I am a supporter. And you know, from day one I said, it's a good thing, we'll support it. You disagreed, you went to court, the court agreed on certain principles. Those principles have been addressed. So I think this is the essence of our democracy. So when it comes to your time in the Senate, please apply your mind, use your legislative powers, do whatever you want to do, and ultimately, the numbers will decide.
Do the right thing.
Yes, ultimately, the numbers will decide.
Okay, let's come to Okongo Morgan, because I think also Honorable Kenan is raising very key concerns as well.
Yes.
First of all, is it the norm that should you have such a bill that is very critical, that you need a preceding PG, maybe just to whip also your members towards now?
Sorry, let me correct this. Not only to whip, but also to educate. sometimes to educate the members.
To educate the members.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Debal,
For lack of
a
better word.
DP, I mean, a PG can be good if you are not going to be lectured like class 1 children, like what happened at State House, where you sit there and you are lectured like a child. I mean,
There was nothing like
where?
that.
That's
Where?
what
You were not there.
That's,
You
no.
There was nothing like that.
Okay, can I keep quiet to the shout? Because either you allow us to air our views.
Okay.
You know, Mheshimiwa, when we speak, we keep quiet.
Wakili agreed.
You know, you say everything. So, Debal, you know, PGs in democracies where you have respect for members of parliament is an exchange of ideas. In fact, what happens in a proper PG is that the leadership of UDA ought to have met the members of parliament first, okay? They sit down and discuss the bill. They give their views, what they don't agree with. By the time they go to State House, they should actually go there to extort some agreement on the changes they want to make on the bill. That's what a proper PG is all about. That's what happens in advanced democracies like the US, even oftentimes in the House of Commons. But what we saw in State House was just a session where the president was calling members to order and pushing through this agenda of affordable housing. So you cannot really call that a PG. That's a dressing down exercise from the executive to the members of parliament. So Debal, I must say I'm extremely disappointed with the performance of members of parliament, especially Mheshimiwa Kenan, who, if you read through his history, you know, is one of the MPs that have really fought for parliament to become independent. He was one of the voices behind the creation of the Parliamentary Service Commission. He knows where we have come from to create a member of parliament that really ought not to go to State House for seeking handouts. So I have a lot of respect for him. And he's really disappointed me on this one. I thought he would be on the side of the people. Number two, let me tell you, bad laws world all over are passed by human beings. So you don't tell us about tyranny of numbers, that you know we were the majority. How many MPs passed Section 2A? You know it. It was almost everybody, including Kibaki, who came to regret later. So even you at one point will regret why you have passed this very bad law. So the fact that many members of parliament have voted for this law doesn't mean it's good. Look at what is there. What are we being called? MPs. I was in church in Machakos and a church elder stood up. He said, "What's wrong with you people? What kind of laws are you passing?" So we have actually lost a lot of, the confidence that Kenyans had on us as members of parliament. And we should do soul searching. So let's not be here and say we are proud, we are the majority, we passed the affordable housing bill. No, we have not done the right thing, and the public mood is not on our side. Three, Debal, if you read the Constitution, we as members of parliament are surrendering the power that the people of Kenya gave us. I want you to read what is in the Constitution, okay? And I want you to listen to the word used. It says, the legislative authority. You know what is authority? When you have been given authority, 94:1. The legislative authority of the people of the republic is derived from the people, and at the national level is vested in and exercised by parliament. So we need to appreciate first that it is we, members of parliament, who have the legislative authority to pass laws that resonate with the people that we represent. We should not accept to reach this level where we are being called MPs. This is not the Martin Shukukus wanted to see. This is not what George Anyona wanted to see. We're actually being a letdown to the people who fought for multipartyism, who fought for separation of powers, who fought for us to be removed away from the control of the executive. So we have been a big letdown, and I hope that when this bill comes to the Senate, we'll get an opportunity to correct it. Number four, we have seen many people make mistakes, especially on taxation. You can be a very good leader, but you can push through very bad legislations, Debal. We saw it under the tenure of Margaret Thatcher, you know, when she pushed through the poll tax, which was very unpopular in 1988. It took John Major to take over power from Margaret Thatcher and do away with that bad law. That's the route I'm seeing as taking on this particular law. We saw it during the tenure of George H.W. Bush. You know, he'd come to power, promised Americans there will be no new taxes. He went behind the Americans, entered into a coalition with senators and members of House of Representatives. He passed very bad taxation laws that were very hurtful to Americans, and it cost him. He served one term, yet was one of the best presidents that the Americans had ever seen. But because of poor taxation, he lost after one term. Here in Kenya, when you don't, when you don't resonate with the people, it can be very costly. In 2002, we had a party in Gusii region called 40 People. And all the cases rallied behind Nyechai. He was elected, went to Parliament. In Parliament, he teamed up with the late President Kibaki, and he passed laws and did actions that were not resonating with the Kisii people. In 2007, not even a single member of Parliament from Kisii region was re-elected on 40 People. What am I saying? You can be in Parliament, but you pass laws that don't resonate with the people. And as you move on, people will wait for you during re-election. So if we are not careful, this particular Parliament, if we are not careful, you will see a tsunami in 2027. Because we are passing laws adding taxations on Kenyans day in, day out. Look, we passed 16% increase on fuel from 8 to 16. What happened? Cost of living went up. Okay, the cost of electricity went up, gas went up, and we still don't care. We are passing SHIF, Social Health Insurance Fund, taking away 2.7% from Kenyans. We're taxing the same Kenyans. Hot on their heels, we are passing this affordable housing, 1.5% on the gross salary of Kenyans. We are being extremely insensitive. If you go back to this particular bill, and I want to thank Mheshimiwa Mungatana here. Last time we spoke, and I think whoever watched him here
went and changed.
Went back and said, in sympathy, of Honorable Mungatana, let's send this thing to Senate. So at least your show is doing something good. They responded, and the bill is now coming to the Senate. But you know what? If you read through this bill, it's clawback on devolution. Everything you see here is a clawback on devolution. If you read this constitution, you go to the fourth schedule, and I think Honorable Tienda understands better because he was in the committee of experts. The fourth schedule is very clear. Part 2, I think paragraph 8. It talks about, I think the word used is planning and development. It's a devolved function.
It says housing.
What does it say?
Housing. But the housing policy is with the national.
It says, it says 8, housing policy is national government, but
housing itself.
When you go to 8, it says county planning and development. For me, development means building homes, building houses. That's what development it is. Policy is giving directions. You can pass laws that give a policy direction on something. But development of housing is a function of county government. But if you read this bill, a board has been created that is taking over the work of building and developing housing units in all the 47 counties. The governors are going to be at the mercy of a minister. They will be begging ministers to give them money to go and do development in their respective counties. So how do you, as a senator, support a bill that is even giving the idea of the idea of that is section 12, okay? The idea of approving all housing investment has been removed from the Senate and transferred to the National Assembly. How can you tell us that such a bill meets the threshold of what is in the Constitution? It's totally unconstitutional, Dibal. And even when you are being told by Mheshimiwa that this bill has addressed the issues that were raised by the High Court, there is no elaborate clause in this bill that responds to the question that was raised by the High Court on the people in informal sector. There's only one mention somewhere which says that people who have annual gross income will be taxed at 1.5%. But the court was telling you, we need a comprehensive framework that responds to how you're going to tax monthly, just like though you are taxing the people in the formal sector on their informal income.
Right.
That has not been addressed. So I want to assure my people of Nyamira that when this bill comes to the floor of the Senate, I will oppose it. And for the record, even if we are not the majority, we'll do the right thing.
Thank you.
And we'll be speaking on behalf of the majority of Kenyans who are against this particular bill.
All right, we shall zoom in the cameras to see where you will be if you
Please do.
Please around Parliament to wait for the session.
Please do.
To just end so far, but it will be coming to the Senate finally. Danson Mungatano, you raised queries around this, and you're surprised that the debate will not be allowed to come through. But
Yes.
also you have some scruples with the bills itself.
Let me just say this. Like my colleague Mheshimiwa Kainan said, there is no perfection in legislation. In fact, most of the times you'll find that the thing that we try to make sure it doesn't happen is to not for it to be against the Constitution. But you'll find legislation always has a loophole. So I believe that we will improve it when it comes to the Senate. But I wanted to say this. You know, yesterday, after the meeting with the Deputy President in Mombasa, the one on drugs and so on, some of us decided to visit the affordable housing project in Buxton Estate. And we toured the place. Now, I grew up around that neighborhood when those houses were for municipality, and I saw the difference, the shift between what was there and what is being developed now. There are hundreds and hundreds of houses, 1-bedroom apartment, 2-bedroom apartment, 3-bedroom apartment. Really, the whole face has changed. And for those of us who are in our 50s now, and we grew up around Buxton, Sparky, Juda, Kule, your area imebadilika completely, and for the better. And the number of people who are going to be accommodated there is going to be great. I'll tell you, whatever we say here, the demand for housing in this country every year per annum is 250,000. We are doing 50,000 units per year. Now, we must agree that the other side, the Azimio side and our side, we agreed in our manifestos that is a need and that we are going to deal with it. Now, we may not agree on the full impact or the actual steps that we are going to take, but for real, for sure, we need to create more housing, and we need to create space for our young growing population. So, having said all those things, I want to say that at the forefront of it, at the whole thing is supported by majority of Kenyans. And I participated in the Tana River public participation when Honorable Johanna Ngeno and his team came to visit us. And I will tell you, there were queries which were raised by the people, but most of us were of the view that we should support this bill. My worry about the approach that I saw in the National Assembly, of course, I didn't participate, but what they did, my colleagues in the National Assembly, by walking out, it was a very sad, very, very sad demonstration of failure to do your duty. Because Article 95 of the Constitution says that in the National Assembly, you are supposed to represent. And my colleagues here who are lawyers will know that even in court, you are supposed to represent a client. You're not supposed to win. We are not trained in our law class to win cases. We are told you represent a client. Now, and you cannot Therefore, because you're seeing your murder trial or your commercial law case is going against you, you pick up your bags and say, oh, what the hell, I'm walking out on this matter. You argue the case to the end, and your colleague argues the case, and then the judge decides. And in this matter, it was incumbent upon our colleagues to argue their matter to the end, whatever that end is. And then I also see the role of the member of parliament in the National Assembly. It does not include abandoning debate and walking out to do press conferences. Anybody can do press conference, but not everybody can debate in the House. That House is a hallowed place. Some of us, when we go in at 2:30, we stay until 6:30. When we were younger, maybe we were not as patient. But then at this time, you actually realize those 4 hours are the 4 hours the people of Tana River have asked you to just stay, because you are the only one qualified to stay there. Whether it is going for you, whether it is going, you are supposed to represent them there. So this whole idea of walking out, I think it's a dereliction of duty. And even I think ESCC should investigate these members of parliament, because they are collecting allowances for the day and they're refusing to work. They're going to do press conferences when they should be addressing the House. So
is it protest also a form of representation?
It is not. It's not. You can protest.
Because they're protesting what you're really happy with.
Yes, ndugu yangu, press conferences don't go away, but the time for debate is defined. So you can wait, finish the debate, and go outside and do that. I wanted to also say that it is not true, and I have a lot of respect for my colleague Mheshimiwa Mogeni. It is not true that we were lectured like children. I think we need to have a comeback on that, because the president made his case. That is true. He made his case and then opened the floor. And I was there, he was there, so we can talk with authority. He opened the floor for people to ask questions, and very difficult questions were asked, including, we are seeing, you hear people telling us that we need to do labor migration. You're signing bilateral labor agreement and so on. But here, your guys at the ministry in migration, they are doing massive corruption there. How do you explain this? Members were very free to ask very difficult questions.
Thank you.
Let me finish, Dibal, your category, because I wanted to explain that the ministers then went on, took the stage, and Kenyans listening to me, I tell you, they defended their positions. They undertook to do changes in whatever they were supposed to do. The complaints were addressed. And then, when you look at a clip that says that, I intend to push this bill, then the president laughs and he says, but they cut off all those. And then they say, members are railroaded to. There was nothing like that. In fact, the president was greeting everyone. We sat down. He didn't even sit in his high table during lunch.
That's water under the bridge right now.
I'm trying to say that you need to understand, because there is a fake story being sold there by media, by opposition, trying to paint President Ruto as a dictator sort of president, trying to paint him like a former president who was there, who pushed us for 24 years. It's just not true. We were having a very cordial interaction. And for those of you who haven't probably interacted with the president, I will tell you something. The president listens to views that are contrary. The president engages. The president is an intellectual.
Thank you.
So I ask Kenyans not to buy these stories that are being peddled around.
Thank you. Let's hear from...
No. I need to correct two things.
There's one aspect of
It is this time. We'll give you time.
And I'm actually responding to you and Honorable Mungatana to issues you raised. So allow me to respond. Dibal, first of all, this whole scenario that has been painted, there are three fundamental problems with it. First, I don't know which Kenya Honorable Mungatana, Honorable Kenan live in, where they are saying Kenyans support the affordable housing bill.
It's amazing.
It must be another Kenya. If it was, you would at least have seen even one cartoon that even demonstrates some sort of support. Every week, even last week, and I dare you to check, all the cartoons are making fun of members of parliament for passing this bill, and they are calling us names because Kenyans overwhelmingly rejected it.
Yeah.
So if you are working for Kenyans, then you must allow them the discretion to reject even what you think is a good idea, but they think is a bad idea. Secondly, Honorable Mungatana is explaining, taking time to explain how CSS sat, how they were interrogated and all. That whole scenario is wrong. A cabinet secretary is a state officer, not for Kenya Kwanza or UDA, but for the public. And if you are to respond to questions, and although I don't support it, then respond in parliament, not in some partisan PG in Naivasha. Because whatever you say there can't be for Kenya. It is for UDA and KK. So even to parade state officers to go to, a partisan meeting is in itself wrong. Thirdly, and I agree with Honorable Omogeni, those PGs are just fora for being lectured and being whipped. We saw, and he was quoted, William Ruto saying that, I want to tell you that the affordable housing bill will pass. He himself says, I don't want to say at any cost, but it will pass. What is that? That's an instruction.
No.
It was clear. And in response, my very good friend, who is the leader of majority in the Senate, told the president, we want to assure you that by Friday, we will have passed that bill in the Senate coming from the National Assembly. What is that? And here Mungatana is talking about debate. How do you debate what has been decided that it will end in 2 days? Now let me come to this. There is no debate. You can't come and say, oh, members of parliament should sit and debate. That's the whole point. And I agree with Fana. You know, even in court, I once represented a client where clearly the court was biased. My colleague is being given all the time to address the court, and you, when you try to address the court, you are cut short. You are told you have 5 minutes, and your colleague has had 3 hours. You know the best thing for your client to do? You don't use those 5 minutes because there's nothing you'll tell the court. What I told the court is that it is clear that my services for my client are not going to be sufficient. So there's greater justice in me recusing myself, the case being adjourned, he gets another lawyer who can be given time. Because clearly the court had issues with me. And that's what you do in these circumstances. When you're in a house and you've done everything possible, and we've just demonstrated that, for debate and you can't, what else do you do? Do you know that all my 3 colleagues, none of them has disputed the fact that there was not sufficient time for debate? But they have gone to try and explain away in all sorts of other manners. When you're in those circumstances, you have a number of options. One, you can do what sometimes has been done before. You engage in shouting matches throughout so that nothing can go on. Or you can do what was done, I think, in the 11th Parliament, where you pour water on the speaker. Or you can do what has also been done in Parliament, where you grab the mace and take off with it. You can do any of those things. But we decided the more decent thing was to just walk out, because that is the least controversial thing to do. Unless Mungatana wanted us to do those others, which we can also do anyway.
You can resign.
Now, let me come to this.
This is the dereliction of duty.
There's nothing like dereliction. What duty? When I've demonstrated to you, there's no debate. Even the amendments here, I can tell you, and there were 49 new clauses, more than the original bill. Nobody, not even from the majority side, debated any of them. It was just, we are introducing clause 33. Could as many as of that opinion say, I can tell you that most of them don't even know the contents of this bill. When I was discussing with some of them later, they were surprised. They are like, you mean? What kind of debate are you talking about? Let me address Honorable Kainan. First of all, you know that publications of bills ordinarily is supposed to take 14 days. So the first thing that has been done and was done with this bill, consistent, it's reduced those 14 days to 2 days publication. Then, secondly, as Honorable Farah was saying, ideally, once you've introduced it, the second reading should go for as long as there are members of parliament who want to speak. Now, it was only spoken to on the first day on Thursday. Under the rules of parliament, once you've spoken to a bill, you cannot speak again. So usually what most members of parliament do is that when they see that the second reading is continuing, they don't attend that particular session because you can't speak. They wait until now, they are sure it's coming for the third reading in the hope that they can speak and introduce other things. So what happens, and this is what happened with the finance bill also, is that on the second day when it's slotted for the second reading, then suddenly somebody shoots up under Standing Order 95 and then the debate is closed. So most people who thought that the debate would go on would not be on the floor. And they ring the bell for 5 to maximum 10 minutes so that then they are locked out. So you catch members, of parliament by surprise intentionally, not to enable them do their work, but to disable them from doing their work. So when Honorable Kenan says there were 58, these are 58 members who had lined up and wanted to speak. And only I was able to speak, and I explained that why. But beyond that, the close of debate is not determined by the members. It's at the discretion of the speaker, as Honorable Farah was saying. What the speaker ought to do is when somebody stands under 95, you say, no. This debate is too important. I will have it today or tomorrow or 3 hours or something like that. That didn't happen. Why is it that members of the minority did not have a minority opinion? It is simple. Because they boycotted the public hearings. We had all agreed that first, the bill was in bad taste. Secondly, they were conducting public hearings at a time that it was in defiance of a court order. So all our members were whipped not to attend those public hearings. So it was, obvious why they didn't attend. Let me just finish this. Let me just point out 4 things which I'm sure even Honorable Kenan does not know is in that bill that was passed. First of all, and I'd said this, the bill now moves from housing to social and physical infrastructure. Basically, it means we are now raising money to do anything because social and physical infrastructure is anything. So we are going outside the normal framework of taxation. And if they decide to build stadia with them, if they decide to build road, that would be within the bill. So the issue that we are talking about housing anymore is now gone. Secondly, in terms of beneficiaries, previously the bill read a person. Now it says a person or body corporate. What does that mean? It means you can now get companies, even non-Kenyan companies, to benefit from this housing bill. So we moved from the myth that we are benefiting, the so-called hustlers, to people who are actually quite able. Thirdly, we have somebody called a collector of this fund. And this collector can be designated by a cabinet secretary. So you and I can be designated. And then you are entitled to 2%. Who do you think will be that collector? Away from KRA, who is the usual collector of taxes. But what's more, once those taxes are collected into the fund, ordinarily it's the controller of budget who controls removal of funds from the consolidated fund. Here, the fund administrator, under clause 22, is entitled to determine withdrawal of funds. So you are creating a parallel system for taxation and a parallel system for withdrawal. What's even more is that Honorable Mangatana gives us the example of when they were in Buxton and all that. The bill does not resolve the most fundamental question which still remains. How do you take public land and develop private houses and sell privately? By what regime of law? How? How do you develop those houses and you don't predetermine whether it's for rental or for sale? So there are some of these things that would have been important to even discuss, even if we were to agree that the numbers will cause the bill to sail through. For the benefit of clarity for those people, we'd have had this debate, but we couldn't because the instruction had come, and I'm sure those are instructions that will come even in the Senate, despite what Ngatana is saying, that pass that bill as it is. Once those instructions come, members of parliament apply their mind like robots. So they don't debate, they don't question, they just There were not I told you that there were amendments which were from the majority side and they were not questioned. They make the bill worse. All the amendments we had proposed were summarily rejected, which is why we walked away. At the end of the day, the unfortunate thing is that whether it's some of us oppose, the blame game on members of parliament comes to all of us, and we all end up being called MPs. So I implore my colleagues to sometimes listen more to Kenyans and less to the chief executive, who is the president.
All right.
Because sometimes it is Kenyans who elect us.
Honorable Farah, we'll circle back with you because I think a lot of issues have been raised so far that we need to respond to, and this was not given ample time on the floor of the House. Is it housing or is it morphing to a social infrastructure funding, as Otieno is trying to put it? What is this morphing also from a person to a body or a body, a corporate body, yeah? And of course, the collector of the fund, who is the collector of fund if it's not KRA? We have the parallel system that is being created here of taxation and also withdrawal. There's some clarity that has to be made, especially when we're dealing with public money and this regard the housing living. Also, I wanted just to ask the question of if we have the standing orders and you have 14 days of a publication of a bill, you have 2 days at least to give ample time for robust debate in the House, as long as everyone has contributed, where is the discretion of the Speaker's panel or the Speaker of the day in light of this? And is there any room for contestation? Let me just take a short break, then we circle back with you. Right, we take a short break. You're watching Siasa Fiesta. When we circle back, of course, Farah Maalim will respond to these queries and some of other issues that have been raised, salient issues by Otieno Amolo and other panelists as well. Don't go away.